Earth had finally joined the Galactic Council after creating faster-than-light travel. Humans were proud of this big step. They thought their newest ship, the TSS Armstrong, was amazing. They were wrong. Admiral Park stood tall as he led the human group into the Grand Council chamber. The room was huge, with curved walls that reached up to show the stars. Around a large round table sat beings from across the galaxy. Some looked almost human. Others were very different, made of crystal, gas, or things humans had no words for. The humans will now present their flagship, announced the council speaker, a tall blue being with 4 arms. Park nodded to Captain June, who activated the hologram. The TSS Armstrong appeared in the center of the room, spinning slowly to show its design. "This is our newest and best ship," Park said. "It can travel at 6 times light speed, has shields that can stop most weapons, and carries enough power to—" A sharp sound interrupted him. It took Park a moment to realize it was laughter. "Is something funny?" he asked. The crystal being, the Vorlax representative, rose from its seat. Its body sparkled under the lights as it spoke in a voice like glass bells. "You call this a ship? This primitive tin can with delusions of grandeur." More laughter spread around the table. "My people built better toys for our children 10,000 years ago." Ambassador Hannah stepped forward. "The Armstrong represents our best technology. We have worked for centuries and achieved very little," said General Krath of the Arcanian Dominion. The general's scaled skin looked like armor, and his yellow eyes seemed bored. "Your species remains millennia behind true galactic engineering. These vessels would not survive first contact with any proper military force." Park felt his face grow hot. He had expected some criticism, but not this level of mockery. The Arcanian general stood up and pointed at the hologram. "Look at these primitive engines. And these weapons, they would barely scratch the paint on any council member's scout ships. We understand we have much to learn," Ambassador Hannah said, trying to stay diplomatic. "That's why we're eager to join the council and—" "Join?" The Vorlax's crystal body flashed with light as it laughed again. "You misunderstand your position. You aren't joining as equals. You're being allowed to observe, to learn. Perhaps in a few hundred years, your species might contribute something useful." Captain June stepped closer to Park and whispered, "Sir, this is humiliating. Should we leave?" Park kept his face neutral despite his anger. "No, we stand our ground." The council speaker raised all 4 hands for silence. "Let us remember the council's purpose. Even young species deserve respect." "Respect is earned," said another alien with tentacles instead of arms. "The humans bring nothing of value to this council." Ambassador Hannah tried again. "We bring new perspectives, unique solutions. You bring nothing but primitive technology and naive ideas." General Krath interrupted. "Your ships are jokes. Your weapons are toys. If you faced any real threat, your entire civilization would fall in days." Park looked around at the faces of the council members. Most showed amusement or pity. Some showed nothing at all. But none showed respect. "Perhaps the humans should return when they have something worth showing," the Vorlax suggested. "Something beyond this floating museum piece." Park had enough. He switched off the hologram himself. "Thank you for your candid assessment. Earth will take your feedback under consideration." As the human delegation turned to leave, the laughter followed them down the long hallway. Once they were alone in their quarters, the facade broke. Captain June slammed his fist against the wall. "How dare they? They don't know what we've overcome to get here." Ambassador Hannah sank into a chair. "We knew we were behind, but this was brutal." Park stayed quiet, looking out the viewport at the massive alien ships docked around the council station. The smallest was 3 times the size of the Armstrong. The largest could probably carry a small city inside it. His communication device beeped. It was a secure channel from Earth Command. Park put it on speaker so the others could hear. "Admiral Park, we monitored the council session," said the voice of Earth's defense director. The response was, as some of us expected. "Sir, they treated us like children," Park said. "Worse than children." "It doesn't matter." The director's voice was strangely calm. "You are to implement Protocol Lazarus immediately. Authorization. Omega 97. Park froze. Ambassador Hannah looked confused, but Captain June's eyes widened in shock. "Sir, Protocol Lazarus, are you certain?" Park asked. "Absolutely certain. It's time they learned who we really are." The communication ended. The room fell silent. "What's Protocol Lazarus?" Hannah finally asked. Park looked at her, then at June. "Our humiliation was expected. In fact, it was the final test." "Test? What test?" "To see if the council races would accept us as equals based on what we showed them." Park turned back to the viewport, looking at the stars. "They failed the test." "I don't understand," Hannah said. June sat down heavily. "It means everything is about to change." Park nodded slowly. "Captain, set course for Earth. Ambassador, prepare for a second council presentation in exactly 7 days." "What will be different in 7 days?" Hannah asked. Park's lips curved in a slight smile. "Everything, Ambassador, everything." As their ship broke away from the council station, Park wondered how the arrogant aliens would react when they learned the truth, that humans had been hiding their real power all along, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. The mockery would end soon. Very soon. Lieutenant Sue pulled her thick coat tighter as the icy wind whipped across the Antarctic landscape. The helicopter had dropped her here, at what looked like nothing but endless ice and snow. Admiral Kim stood next to her, seemingly unbothered by the cold. "There's nothing here," Sue said, her words lost in the howling wind. Admiral Kim smiled and pressed something on his wrist device. The ground beneath them began to rumble. Sue stepped back in alarm as a section of ice 30 meters wide split apart, revealing a dark opening. "Follow me," Kim said, walking toward the opening where a platform now rose to meet them. Sue hesitated but followed. The platform took them down into darkness. As they descended, the opening above closed, sealing them inside. Lights came on along the walls, revealing they were in a massive elevator shaft cut through solid rock. "What is this place?" Sue asked. "The truth," Kim replied simply. The elevator continued down for what felt like minutes. Sue checked her watch. They had descended over 3 kilometers. Finally, the elevator slowed and stopped. The doors opened to reveal a security checkpoint unlike any Sue had ever seen. Guards in uniforms she didn't recognize stood at attention. The symbols on their uniforms weren't standard military markings. "Admiral Kim, identity confirmed," said one guard after scanning him. "Lieutenant Sue, identity confirmed. You are cleared to enter." "This facility doesn't exist in any official records," Kim explained as they walked through. "The people who work here are part of an order that has existed for thousands of years." Sue tried to process this. An order. The Guardians. Their sole purpose has been to protect what you're about to see. They passed through 7 more security checkpoints. At each one, the technology became stranger, less recognizable. Some of the scanners didn't look human-made at all. Finally, they reached a massive set of doors. They were black, made of a material Sue couldn't identify, and covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift when she looked at them directly. Admiral Kim placed his hand on a panel. The doors slowly opened. "What you're about to see violates everything you think you know about human history," he said. "The public thinks we struggled for centuries to develop FTL technology. The truth, we discovered it 12,000 years ago." The doors opened fully, and lights activated in sequence, revealing the largest underground space Sue had ever seen. It was so vast she couldn't see the far wall. But what made her gasp wasn't the size of the chamber. It was what it contained. Ships. Hundreds of ships. But not like the vessels Earth had presented to the Galactic Council. These were different, sleek, black, and clearly built with technology far beyond what humans supposedly possessed. They floated in perfect rows, suspended in some kind of energy field. "This isn't possible," Sue whispered. "Walk with me," Kim said. As they moved along a walkway that overlooked the massive hangar, Sue saw that the ships extended farther than she'd first realized. There weren't hundreds, there were thousands, and they varied in size, from small fighters to massive vessels that could probably carry entire cities. 12,000 years ago, Kim explained, Earth was home to an advanced civilization. We don't know what they called themselves. Later cultures would remember them as Atlanteans, the people of Mu, or the builders of the first pyramids. But they were us, humans who had achieved technology that we're only now beginning to understand again. "That's impossible," Sue said. "We would have found evidence." "We did. We've been hiding it." Kim stopped at a viewpoint that overlooked a particularly large vessel. "This is the Night Star. It's over 15 kilometers long. It can travel to the edge of the galaxy in days." Sue stared at the massive ship. Why hide this? Why pretend to be technologically backward? Kim gestured to a group of people working on one of the smaller ships. The ancient civilization reached its peak, then faced a threat we still don't fully understand. They realized they couldn't win a direct conflict, so they made a choice. They sealed away their technology and their knowledge, hiding it deep beneath the ice, the oceans, and the earth. They left behind guardians, a small group tasked with protecting humanity and this technology until we were ready for it again. "Ready for what?" Sue asked. "To reclaim our heritage and our place in the galaxy." They continued walking. Sue noticed strange symbols on the ships, similar to the ones on the doors they had passed through. "These symbols," Kim said, following her gaze, "appear in ancient ruins around the world. The Guardians kept their meaning secret, passing it down through generations. They've been watching humanity, guiding our development from the shadows." "So the Armstrong and our other ships." "Props," Kim said, "built to look like what the galaxy would expect from a young species just discovering FTL travel. We wanted to see how the Galactic Council would treat us if they thought we were weak." Kim led her toward a smaller ship near the edge of the hangar. Unlike the others, this one had an open hatch and a ramp leading inside. "This will be your ship, Lieutenant. The Starlight. You're being promoted to captain, effective immediately." Sue stopped walking. "My ship? I don't understand." "Protocol Lazarus is the awakening of this fleet, and you're one of the officers we've selected to command it." Kim smiled at her shock. "You've been trained for this your entire career without knowing it. The simulations, the tests, they were preparing you for these ships, not the ones the public knows about." Sue looked around at the massive fleet again. "The Council mocked us." "Yes," Kim said. "And now they'll learn the truth." "When?" "The fleet awakens tomorrow. In 7 days, we return to the Council, not as supplicants, but as the descendants of those they once feared, the precursors." Sue looked at the ship that was now hers. "And if they don't believe us?" Admiral Kim's expression hardened. "Then we'll have to remind them why their ancestors feared ours." The emergency alarm blared through the Galactic Council station, its urgent tone bringing all normal activities to a halt. Council members rushed to the main chamber, some still adjusting their formal attire, others speaking rapidly into communication devices. Something big was happening. Ambassador Lee stood calmly at the center of the room. Unlike 7 days ago when the human delegation had left in humiliation, today she displayed a confident smile. Behind her, Admiral Kim and Captain Sue waited silently. "What is the meaning of this emergency session?" demanded the Vorlax representative, its crystalline body flashing with irritation. "Humans have no authority to call the full council." "I apologize for the inconvenience," Lee said, though her tone held no real apology. "But there's something you need to see." General Krath of the Arcanian Dominion entered last, his scaled skin catching the light as he took his seat. "This had better be important, Ambassador. Your species was advised to return when you had something worth showing." "Oh, we do," Lee replied. She nodded to Captain Sue, who activated a display in the center of the chamber. The hologram showed a live feed of Earth's solar system. At first, it appeared normal. The sun, 8 planets, the asteroid belt. Then something changed. Dark spots appeared throughout the system, growing larger by the second. "What are we looking at?" asked the council speaker. "Watch," Lee said simply. The dark spots continued growing until they took recognizable forms, ships. Thousands of ships emerging from hidden locations throughout the solar system. Some rose from beneath the surfaces of moons. Others appeared from inside gas giants where no ship should be able to survive. Hundreds more detached from asteroids that split open like shells. The council chamber fell completely silent. The ships were unlike anything humans had previously shown. They were sleek, black vessels with no visible engines or weapons, yet they moved with impossible grace. The largest of them dwarfed even the biggest council warships. But what drew gasps from the council members weren't the ships themselves. It was the symbols etched on their hulls, ancient patterns that several of the oldest council species clearly recognized. A tentacled being rose shakily from its seat. "Those markings, they cannot be." "But they are," Lee said. She tapped a control, enlarging the image of one ship's hull markings. "You recognize these, don't you? Your histories call them the precursors, the architects, the firstborn." She paused, allowing her next words to land with full impact. "We call them our ancestors." Chaos erupted in the chamber. Council members shouted over each other, some in disbelief, others in fear. General Kraft stood frozen, his yellow eyes wide with shock. "Impossible," he finally said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "The precursors vanished 50,000 years ago. They abandoned this galaxy." "They didn't vanish," Lee said. "They retreated to Earth, hiding their technology until their descendants were ready to reclaim their heritage." The Vorlax representative's crystalline form had lost its usual brilliant shine. "This is a trick. Humans are too young a species." Admiral Kim stepped forward. "Modern human civilization is young, yes. But humanity itself, much older than you've been led to believe. If you are truly descended from the precursors," said the council speaker, struggling to maintain order, "why pretend to be technologically primitive? Why the deception?" Lee walked slowly around the table, looking each council member in the eye before answering. 12,000 years ago, our ancestors faced a threat that even they, with all their power, couldn't defeat directly. They made a strategic choice to hide their true nature, to become invisible among the younger races, to watch and wait. "Wait for what?" asked a reptilian council member. "For the right time to return." Lee gestured to the hologram, where more ships continued to appear. "For millennia, we've been guided by guardians who protected our ancient knowledge, waiting for humanity to mature enough to reclaim it." General Kraft had recovered some of his composure. "If what you claim is true, your fleet could dominate the galaxy. Is that your intention? Conquest?" "No," Admiral Kim said firmly. "If conquest was our goal, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You would already be defeated." The council chamber fell silent again. "Then what do you want?" asked the Vorlax. "The same thing we wanted 7 days ago," Lee said, "to join the Galactic Council. But this time, as equals." Captain Sue stepped forward, activating another display that showed the technical specifications of the human fleet. The numbers were staggering. Ships that could travel 1,000 times faster than light, energy shields that could withstand supernovas, weapons that could move planets. "The Arcanian archives," General Kraft said quietly, "contain prophecies about the return of the precursors. They say when the children of the architects return, the stars themselves will tremble." "We don't want the stars to tremble," Lee said. "We want them to shine for everyone." The council speaker rose. "These claims, they require proof. Not just ships, but evidence that they truly possess precursor technology." "We anticipated that," Admiral Kim said. That's why we're prepared to offer a demonstration. What kind of demonstration? Asked the Vorlax, suspicion clear in its tone. One that will remove all doubt, Kim said. Choose any uninhabited system within 1,000 light years. We'll meet you there in 3 days. General Kraft looked at the fleet display again, mentally calculating. Your fastest ships would take weeks to reach that distance. Admiral Kim smiled. No, General. Our ships will be there in minutes. The question is whether you'll be there in 3 days. As the council members looked at each other in shock, Lee added, and please, bring your best scientists. They'll want to witness this. The emergency session ended with the council in disarray. As Lee, Kim, and Sue departed, they could hear the frantic discussions behind them. Do you think they believe us? Sue asked quietly. It doesn't matter, Kim replied. In 3 days, belief won't be necessary. They'll know. The uninhabited system chosen for the demonstration orbited a red dwarf star at the edge of Arcanian territory. It contained nothing of value, just a few rocky planets and a dense asteroid belt. That made it perfect for what Admiral Kim had planned. Council ships arrived over the 3 days following the emergency session. By the agreed time, representatives from 27 galactic powers had gathered on the Arcanian observation vessel, the largest ship present. The mood was tense, with many still believing the humans were perpetrating an elaborate hoax. General Kraft stood at the main viewing window, watching as the last diplomatic shuttles docked. The humans aren't here yet, he noted to his aide. Perhaps their miraculous fleet isn't as fast as they claimed. As if in answer to his words, space seemed to ripple at the edge of the system. A small black ship appeared, just one, no larger than a standard courier vessel. That's it. The Vorlax representative's crystalline body flashed with derision. One tiny ship. The observation deck's communication system activated, and Admiral Kim's voice filled the room. Thank you all for coming. We apologize for sending only one vessel, but we felt a full fleet might seem intimidating. General Kraft leaned toward the communication panel. This demonstration was your idea, Admiral. We expected something more impressive than a single scout ship. This vessel carries only defensive systems, Kim explained calmly. No offensive capabilities whatsoever. We call it the Starlight. Captain Sue commands it. On the Starlight's bridge, Captain Sue sat in a chair unlike any found on conventional human ships. Rather than buttons and screens, the control interface consisted of a clear panel that responded to her thoughts. 5 crew members similarly connected to their stations through mental links. All systems ready, Captain, reported her first officer. Sue nodded. Begin the demonstration. The Starlight moved toward the asteroid belt, its movement unnaturally smooth. On the observation deck, scientists from a dozen worlds monitored their instruments closely. Interesting, murmured a Terebi physicist, her 6 eyes blinking in sequence. Their drive system produces no detectable exhaust. No radiation signature. Perhaps it's shielded, suggested another scientist. No shield can hide all energy output, the Terebi replied. It's as if they're not using energy at all. They're suggesting to space that it should move. General Kraft frowned. Speaking nonsense won't impress me, Doctor. It's not nonsense, she insisted. It's just the only way I can describe what I'm seeing. The Starlight reached the asteroid belt and stopped. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a soft blue glow surrounded the ship, extending outward in a perfect sphere. They're activating some kind of shield, observed a military analyst. Standard procedure when entering an asteroid field. But what happened next was far from standard. As the field expanded, asteroids within its range didn't bounce off or get pushed away. They began to move in controlled patterns. Dozens, then hundreds of massive rocks shifted position with impossible precision. What are they doing? Asked the Vorlax representative. An answer came as the asteroids arranged themselves into a 3-dimensional shape, a perfect replica of the ancient symbol seen on the human ships. the symbol that many council races recognized as belonging to the precursors. "That's impossible," whispered General Krath. "Even our best tractor beams couldn't manage that level of control." The Terabi physicist stared at her readings in disbelief. "They're not using tractor beams. They're manipulating gravity itself, creating controlled microsingularities that precisely alter the gravitational field around each asteroid." "That's beyond theoretical," said another scientist. "No known civilization has achieved practical gravity manipulation on this scale." "Except the precursors," said an elderly Arcanian historian who had remained silent until now. "The ancient texts describe their ability to speak to the fundamental forces and ask gravity to dance to their tune." The demonstration continued as the asteroid formation began to rotate smoothly, then transformed into a different symbol, then another. It was like watching a dance choreographed with perfect precision. "Admiral Kim," General Krath said into the communication system, his voice now respectful, "how is your ship accomplishing this?" "The technology is difficult to explain using conventional physics," Kim replied. "But perhaps this will help you understand." The blue field around the starlight pulsed once. Suddenly, the space around the asteroid belt seemed to bend. A small, controlled wormhole opened between 2 points in the belt. The observation deck erupted in shocked exclamations. Creating stable wormholes was theoretically possible, but had never been practically achieved by any council race. "That technology." The Vorlax's voice was barely audible. "We've been trying to recreate it for thousands of years, based on ancient ruins." "The Nexus gates," Kim confirmed. "Yes, those were also built by our ancestors. The principles are the same, manipulating the fabric of space-time by understanding it as information rather than physical law." Captain Sue directed her crew to the demonstration's final phase. The wormhole closed, and the blue field pulsed again. This time, time itself seemed to slow within a small section of the asteroid field. Rocks that should have collided stopped, frozen in space. "They're manipulating time," the Terabi physicist said, her voice shaking. "Local time dilation. That's a violation of every physical law we understand," finished another scientist. "No," the Arcanian historian corrected. "It's exactly what the ancient texts described." The architects spoke to time itself, asking it to flow as they wished. The demonstration ended as the starlight deactivated its field. The asteroids drifted back to their natural positions, and the small ship turned toward the observation vessel. "Are there any questions?" Admiral Kim asked through the communication system. The observation deck remained silent. There were no questions because the demonstration had answered everything. Humans hadn't just found precursor technology. They were the precursor's direct descendants, with all the power that implied. General Krath finally spoke, his voice solemn. "Admiral Kim, the Council will need to discuss the implications of what we've witnessed today." "Of course," Kim replied. "We'll await your response. The starlight will return to Earth now, but we can be back anywhere in the galaxy within minutes if needed." As the black ship disappeared in another ripple of space, the gathered representatives looked at each other with new understanding. Everything had changed. The galaxy now contained a power that none of them could match, a power that had chosen to reveal itself rather than conquer. The question on everyone's mind was simple. What would the humans do next? 3 months had passed since the demonstration. Earth had changed. The world now knew the truth about its hidden past. Streets that once held ordinary traffic now saw strange ships flying overhead. Small personal craft based on ancient designs, but adapted for modern use. Ambassador Lee walked through the new Council embassy on Earth, built in what was once called Switzerland. The building combined styles from across the galaxy with elements of ancient Earth architecture that had been lost for millennia. Workers were putting final touches on a grand hall where representatives from 57 worlds would gather today. "Is everything ready?" Lee asked her assistant. "Yes, Ambassador. The Treaty of Sol will be presented in 1 hour." Lee nodded. The treaty represented 3 months of intense negotiation. After the initial shock had worn off, The Galactic Council had moved quickly to establish new relations with Earth. Some races pushed for military alliances. Others sought technology exchanges. All wanted to ensure humans wouldn't use their power against them. Captain Sue, now Admiral Sue, entered the hall in her new uniform. The black material seemed to absorb light, while the silver symbols of rank caught it brilliantly. "The fleet commanders are in position," Sue reported, "just as a precaution." "Do you expect trouble?" Lee asked. "No, but my job is to be ready for it anyway." Since the revelation, Earth had activated only 30 ships from the ancient fleet, mostly for scientific and diplomatic missions. The rest remained in their hidden bases. This restraint had helped calm fears across the galaxy. Earth could have conquered. Instead, it chose to talk. The hall filled as the hour approached. Representatives from across the galaxy took their places. Some races that had never visited Earth before had come for this historic event. The Galactic Council's highest members sat in a special section, with General Krath of the Arcanian Dominion now serving as the Council's primary liaison to Earth. Admiral Kim entered last, carrying an ornate box. Inside was the Treaty of Sol, written on special paper using inks from every Council world. The treaty itself was simple. It established a framework for peaceful coexistence between Earth and the galactic community. The Council speaker, the blue four-armed being who had presided over Earth's humiliating introduction months ago, opened the ceremony. Today marks a new chapter in galactic history. The return of humanity to its rightful place among the stars. The atmosphere was respectful, even reverent, a far cry from the mockery humans had faced before. Many still had questions about why the descendants of the precursors had hidden for so long, or what had caused them to seal away their technology in the first place. But those questions would wait for another day. General Krath stepped forward. "In the 3 months since the revelation, my people have opened our ancient archives. We found references to a threat that the precursors, the ancient humans, faced. A threat so great that even they, with all their power, chose to hide rather than fight." A murmur ran through the gathered representatives. "We don't yet know what this threat was," Krath continued. "Perhaps it's long gone. Perhaps it still exists somewhere in the dark between galaxies. But what matters is the choice the ancestors made, not to use their power for domination, but to preserve it until it could be used wisely." Ambassador Lee rose to speak next. "We could have returned with conquest in mind," she said, addressing the assembly. "Our ancestors chose differently. They sealed away their power not from fear, but from wisdom. They understood that true civilization isn't measured by military might, but by the restraint shown when wielding it." She looked around at the gathered representatives. "Earth remembers its past now. We remember who we were, but we also value who we've become during our long sleep. A younger civilization that had to struggle, to learn, to overcome challenges without relying on ancient power." The Vorlax representative's crystal form caught the light as it moved forward. Its tone, once mocking, was now respectful. "The question many ask is, what will you do with this power now that you've reclaimed it?" "Share it," Lee said simply. "Not all at once. That would be irresponsible. But gradually, as the galaxy is ready. The precursors once guided younger races. We will do so again." Admiral Kim opened the ornate box and presented the treaty. "This document establishes a new council, one where Earth has a voice equal to others, but not above them. It creates joint scientific missions to study and safely adapt ancient technologies. It maintains the peace that has existed in this sector for centuries." The signing ceremony proceeded with representatives from each world adding their mark to the treaty. When finished, the document would be displayed in the hall as a symbol of this new era. General Krath, now Earth's strongest ally in the Council, approached Admiral Kim while others were signing. "The Arcanian archives contain a precursor saying," he said quietly. "Power without wisdom brings only destruction. Your ancestors understood this. I believe their descendants do as well." Kim nodded. "We've had 12,000 years to learn that lesson again, just by different means. Earth fought its own wars, made its own mistakes. Perhaps that was part of our ancestors' plan, to let us grow up again, to earn our heritage rather than simply inherit it. When the ceremony concluded, the representatives moved to a reception area with views of Earth's mountains and lakes. The planet had become the center of galactic attention, not as a conquest or a curiosity, but as the birthplace of a civilization so advanced it had once been revered as gods by younger races. Admiral Sue joined Ambassador Lee at a window overlooking the landscape. "What happens now?" she asked. Lee watched as ships from a dozen worlds flew overhead, no longer afraid of Earth, but eager to learn from it. "Now comes the hard part. Living up to our ancestors' legacy while avoiding their mistakes, whatever those were." "And the fleet?" Sue asked. "Remains mostly dormant," Lee replied. "Not from fear, but from wisdom. Our power isn't measured by how many ancient warships we activate, but by how rarely we need them." As night fell over the new embassy, lights from ships and buildings created patterns across the landscape that mirrored the ancient symbols now visible on structures around the world. Earth had remembered its past. Now it would shape its future, not through conquest, but through the balanced use of power so great it could reshape stars. The true test of humanity wasn't reclaiming their heritage. It was proving they deserved it. Remains mostly dormant, Lee replied. Not from fear, but from wisdom. Our power isn't measured by how many ancient warships we activate, but by how rarely we need them. As night fell over the new embassy, lights from ships and buildings created patterns across the landscape that mirrored the ancient symbols now visible on structures around the world. Earth had remembered its past. Now it would shape its future, not through conquest, but through the balanced use of power so great it could reshape stars. The true test of humanity wasn't reclaiming their heritage. It was proving they deserved it.